All right, guys, as always, second while I get the other chat live. I just got bit by a mosquito. Sorry about the chaos lately. We got hit with some... Oh, let me get this other... There we go. I think we're all live. All right. We got hit with some crazy news. It's not necessarily bad, but it was tremendous. And I don't really want to get into it, but... it kind of left us with an uncertainty about something that is tremendously, potentially wonderful. And I think it's going to be probably about a week before I know whether it's going to matter or not. One thing I will say about that is that if it pans out, this community is about to get hit with a tidal wave, and a lot of people's lives are going to improve considerably. So, beyond that, it's Thanksgiving. Speaking of things to be grateful about, we're in the middle of moving. So, I'm going to keep it kind of brief tonight, but I don't know if our internet is going to be working when we get into the new place, which is just absolutely phenomenal. We are so happy to have acquired such a paradisical setting out of nowhere. I mean, we really were not... we were not expecting it. So, third eye glasses, wink your third eye thrice, if you know what I mean. We've been talking about Hermes Trismegistus and the possibility that what we call the Hermetic teachings, which is really a loose term that is defined differently by different people. I like Helena Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine. I think that's a great way to refer to it. Hermes definitely does not own this knowledge. It's really just the Prisca, or the Theologia Prisca, which is like the pristine knowledge of God, you know, or the pristine knowledge, really. Forget about God. You know, we have no real direct knowledge of that. And in the world of Hermes, gnosis is really the only direct experience, you know, direct experience. Knowledge that you have acquired through your own processes is the only form of knowledge that can possibly have any meaning or use or utilization or substance for anyone, you know? According to the Kabbalion, all of the major religions are distortions of what we call the Hermetic teachings. And really, it's a knowledge of the light, you know. In the Pymander, which is the book we've been reading and that I'm going to be offering commentary to, we're going to be allowing Hermes himself to be our guide. And then if I feel that I have something to add or something could use some extrapolation and elucidation for your elucidation and pontification for your edification and amusement, then I'll offer my 3 cents. Where are we going with this? Yeah, the Dragon of Light, right? It's really knowledge of the light, because that's all there is. There are two things in the universe, a void and light. Light in a standing wave, all matter. Everything you perceive is a trick of the light. And so this teachings, this knowledge, however you want to think of it, has also been lumped in with Luciferianism, because that's really... what it is. If you are talking about Luciferianism in the sense of knowledge of light, the light bearer, and individual sovereignty, and individual self-centered, not self-centered as in selfish, but self-directed evolution. You know, that's what this stuff is really about. I also want to mention, before we jump back into the book, that somehow I had overlooked something in Corinthians that I feel is relevant. Speaking of these religions being a distortion of the Hermetic teachings. In fact, I wouldn't really call it a row, but certainly a palpable difference of opinion. You know, because there's a guy here that works with ayahuasca and is also a Hermetic magician, but he's Christian, like very Christian. And a lot of us take pretty profound offense to that, you know, because it's like, it was culturally appropriated, turned into a weapon with the intention of subverting the empowering message of the secret doctrine. You know, so this reintegration or integration of Jesus in the place of Hermes, you know, we really don't like that much. And in light of that subject, I guess, that antidote, and I don't have the exact verses, but if you just Google Paul admits he made it all up, Paul wrote 14 of the 27 books of the New Testament, 14 of them. And twice in Corinthians, he says, none of this that I have written is divine revelation from God, nor command from God. It is only my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt, including redemption through the blood of Christ. So, you know, it may seem like I'm trolling or being mean-spirited, but I think actually the dissolution of these perversions of light, these distortions of light, need to be disintegrated and disposed of in order for us to get back to the real self-evident primal truth. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine today. He is not quite 10 years younger, you know, different generation, totally different background. Not even a tremendous amount of psychedelics, I don't think. And when we eventually started to talk about our sort of metaphysical thinking or our ontology or, you know, our beliefs about the universe, we realized that they are exactly the same. Down to the most, you know, the finest detail, anything you can think of, any aspect of any of it. And of course, I've encountered this many, many, many times, you know. And so the logic is that, and the same thing happened when I found Hermes' writings, you know, that I realized this is, you know, how I and people like me just naturally see the world. And I think that it's not really even anything that extraordinary. It's just what happens when people are not susceptible to indoctrination or not exposed to it enough, you know, that it actually is simple and evident to understand how the universe works, and our place in it, and to understand our role in the universe. It's not some extraordinary feat to become illuminated and enlightened like the Buddha. You know, the way Buddhism frames this. I'm actually very suspicious of that. Enlightenment, as far as I can tell, is a spectrum. Anyways, it's not like you just arrive and suddenly you know everything. But yeah, I think that it should be our natural state. And the fact that we have kind of been conditioned to believe that it's such a lofty, rare condition for people to achieve any, you know, marked level of illumination is a lie. And it's a lie that keeps us trapped because we have this limiting belief that it's so distant and inaccessible when really it should be normal. It should be our normal. It's our divine right to have this knowledge and understanding. So let me check in with the chat real quick. I've been having tons of technical problems with my computer. Most of you know, including tonight. So let me make sure my audio is still up and running. Also, I'm seeing some weird stuff in the audio feed, and one of my bugs is that my monitor headphones are not working. So please let me know if there's a bunch of noise that I can try to get rid of. Let me see. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, there's actually a decent number of us in the... So let me switch my OBS so that you guys won't see the ridiculous wad of coca paste in my cheek, and you can see the Pymanders. And if you're new to the stream, how do I do this? Is it screen capture? Yeah. There we go. All right, damn it. You know what? I don't know why, guys. I'm really sorry about this. But in the vertical feed, it does not switch when I change my OBS. I have no idea why. Let me see. Oh, I have an idea. Did that? Nope, that didn't help, did it? Yeah. Sorry about that. You'll just have to stare at me instead of the book, which I guess isn't the worst thing that's ever happened. So you will be able to see the wad of coca. So where was I at explaining all of this? Okay, this is a 1650. Originally Arabic. There's actually a very strong Arabic current in, or Hermetic current, excuse me. And this book was translated to English from the Arabic in 1650. It was published. And so we were on page 25, and I'm trying to look at it and see if maybe we should go back a little bit and give some context, or let's see. No, perfect. Buddha in Egypt was called Hermes Trismegistus. And now synchronicity is actually a huge part of this system. Not so much traditionally, but really this tradition today, I mean, it's not even a tradition. It's an aggregate of syncretic protocols, really. So, better way to frame it. But anything that develops and sustains your dialogue with the universal mind, which is also a dialogue with the subconscious, right? So there's those two aspects which are really one thing. And when you do that, synchronicities become extremely consistent. In fact, I was going to share one. Something ridiculous just happened to me. Oh, yeah, I can't talk about it yet. That's what... I can't. I want to, but I can't. Anyways, we were just talking about the Buddha, and I did not read ahead. And that's the first word. Buddha in Egypt was called Hermes Trismegistus. Lycophron calls him Tricephalus. This speaks for itself, as we are aware that Buddha is identified with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Tao was the instrument of death, but it was also what Ezekiel ordered the people in Jerusalem to be marked with, who were to be saved from the destroyer. It was also the emblem of the Tyrannus, or the Thoth, or Tautates, or Tot, or Hermes, or Buddha among the Druids. It was called the Crux Hermes. The Old Hebrew, the Bostonian, and the Pelasgian have the letter Tau, thus X. The Etruscan addition symbol, multiplication symbol, X, the Coptic cross, the Punic, whatever that thing is. And I'm sure you guys have caught on to this already, but, I kind of opened this talking about how all of the major religions are distortions of the secret doctrine. Even a lot of the Bible stories are tales of Hermes. The tales of Jesus are actually, Dionysus turning blood into wine, but a lesser known, pineapple juice. Gracias, mi amor. A lesser known one is David and Goliath is actually based on Hermes slaying a giant. And so the cross, we have this T, the Tao, Coptic cross. This is an illusion. I don't know if they're going to get deeper into this. And eventually we'll do plenty of fleshing out the relationship between Trismegistus and the Christ myth. The opposition, which the possibility of the powers of nature acting in the conversion of the baser metals into gold, evokes from the supposed learned modern people with whom we confess we are at utter issue, is remarkable. Okay, so this book was written and published in a time when alchemy was, not new to Europe, but was like a current thing. You know what I mean? This is the time of the alchemists in Europe. And as recently as when I was a elementary school kid, they believed that elements could not be transmutated. And this is evidence of how bad the education system is in the United States. Because due to this, which I was still hearing about at least in junior high school, I assumed when I read about the laboratory where they've turned mercury into gold with an electric charge, which, by the way, is exactly how it's described being done in Albert Pike's 1851 Masonic book, Morals and Dogma. That actually happened in 1983, and they were still teaching us in 94, 95 that it was impossible in the public schools. So that kind of thing could just be a misfire, on the part of the education system. But I'm more inclined to think that it's a deliberate oppression of this knowledge. In case you're new to the stream, speaking of Albert Pike, one of the things that he mentions and describes in Morals and Dogma is the fact that both the Egyptian authorities and the Roman authorities realized that the mysteries were illuminating people and that illuminated people were impossible to rule. And so they sent people to subvert the mysteries and to sabotage them. In Rome, there were the archon magistrates, which is where the entities in Gnosticism, the archons that stop people from getting, profound spiritual knowledge. That was just, they were humans. They weren't spirits. But yeah, so the authorities have been aware of the power of this knowledge to liberate the masses for hundreds of years. And this is a 33rd degree Mason writing this, and we know that there's a lot of them in positions of power. They're aware of this. So, probably deliberate. And another thing that I wanted to just gloss over is that, most of you watching this probably know, but the idea of alchemical transmutation, not only is it one of the mystical things that the mainstream has loved to mock and ridicule, even though their scientists have been doing it for 30 years, 32 years. It's actually the fundamental process that's occurring in the universe, as far as a lot of people can tell. Physics doesn't tend to agree. There's a lot of schools that are, contentious. String theory, every month you're hearing it's debunked, and then that it's not, or maybe they had a bit wrong, and then there's quantum loop theory, which I, had a vision that showed the universe working in this way. And then quantum loop theory came along like 10 years later, and I was like, that's nuts. Doesn't mean necessarily that it's true, but that's one of these contentious areas. And quantum loop theory basically says that the universe is an alchemical transmutation process, the gold of pure consciousness, right? Because the pure energy, the light, the electromagnetic radiation is really the quintessence. It is the mind of God. It is the universal mind's operating platform. And so, the light descends into matter, and it becomes the prima materia, and then through a process of refinement, I guess, a word that is often used as redemption, which I don't know if I really like. In a sense, I guess that's fine. So, but it's redintegrated, which is an archaic word that means to return something to its former state. So the light becomes matter, crystallizes, and it dissolves again and is redintegrated back into light, which is also spirit. And then this causes all of the energy in the universe to collapse. And because the Particles do not change size, right? This is according to physics, not mysticism. Actually, mysticism also. But when the universe collapses in on itself, the electrons, quarks, muon, whatever, all of the protons, all of the things, all of the particles, they stay the same size, but it still collapses into the singularity, which is like unspeakably minuscule. But all these particles are just as big as they ever were, and so that causes it eventually to systole, diastole, to contract almost infinitely and then to expand almost infinitely. But that process is the macroscopic version of the alchemical process that happens in a phial. And of course, as you guys know, this is a fundamental sort of protocol or way of learning about the universe, this microcosm, macrocosm. It's also present in Taoism, really, because due to the fact that all things are a reflection of the original one thing, specifically in the sense that the same laws are exerted upon similar systems with similar mathematical bases. This is why a Zen master will tell the student who asks him a question, he asks him 10 different questions every time, he just tells him to watch a leaf spinning in a puddle. That's why. Microcosm, macrocosm, and we'll get pretty deep into the technical apparatus of how this kind of thinking is navigated eventually. Okay, so, there is one other thing I want to mention before we move on, and this came up today, and it's really interesting, and I'm not trying to be condescending to our Muggle contemporaries, right? I honestly don't care if it's condescending, because it was condescending to us in the first place. But one of the things that, mysticism, whatever, gets ridiculed for is statements like, it is and it's not. All of these things are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false. The Muggle mind hears this, and they're like, this is just gibberish, you're trying to sound deep, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, so physicists roll their eyes and scoff at me for saying it is and it's not. Everything contains its contradiction. And then they say, well, time exists, but it doesn't. It has an arrow in our brain, maybe, that causes us to perceive a direction, but really it's all happening at once. Oh, so it is and it's not? You're rolling your eyes and scoffing and then, giving a technical description. And I could give you a dozen examples like that. And again, I'm not really mentioning this just to troll normies or whatever. But I've noticed that a lot of us, including myself, are plagued with doubt to a degree that is not appropriate. And this is why, And I think it is really important for us to take note of the fact that, in large part, we really are dealing with people that are running scripts. And it's really important to notice the discrepancies and the dissonance and to call them out and, work through it, kids. Let me check in the chat again to make sure everything is still kosher. The Dragon of Dwight. Thank you, Athena, for axing the troll. I don't know if he was Jesus freaking or... There was another example I was going to give, but I think that's good enough. I mean, you guys can see, the propensity, the inclination that people have to have this kind of cognitive dissonance to the point where they will mock people for saying something they themselves know is true just because they have been, they've become accustomed to laughing at the context it's being presented in. And another reason this matters is that if science hadn't been so arrogant, the superstitious folly of spirituality is totally acknowledged. I hate it too. I don't blame them one little bit. Right? Woo-based spirituality is really just people's superstitious way of understanding or describing or contextualizing things that science doesn't yet have an understanding of and a mechanism for. But if they had taken some input from real initiates, who you can tell are extreme, like the person that wrote this book, obviously highly intelligent, science would have come a lot further. And it's also another thing to blame Christianity and Islam and other religions for. Because religion developed a very deserved reputation for slowing down the progress of the sciences. And so you really can't blame them, to an extent, but it is unfortunate. The flip side, again, is that if we're able to heal this divide, to bridge the gap, it will be a catalyst like none seen before in human history. And when you consider that if we are able to constrain AI and maybe even aliens in the ocean, all of this at once, the consciousness and the potential of humanity could be just exponentially exploded into the, either into the mushroom cloud of Leary and McKenna, or it'll be exploded into the mushroom cloud of Oppenheimer. If we manage to integrate this stuff in the sciences, mushroom cloud of Leary and McKenna. Otherwise, Oppenheimer. So, we were talking about base metals and the transmutation. I'm actually not going to stop talking about alchemy yet. Tremendously important. People observe pretty ubiquitously the artists, great musicians, the 27 Club. They don't make it past their Saturn return. Heroin addiction, alcoholism. All of this stuff is personality problems. Bad personality problems. John Lennon punched a female reporter in the face and broke her nose for taking a picture of him. The guy's a rock star that comes with it. You know what I mean? Like, crazy stuff. You guys know. Jim Morrison burning his hotel room with his wife locked in the... You know what I mean? There's a hole in the soul where the light comes through. Right? Some people take issue with that, like the belief that you have to be damaged to be a great artist. Show me otherwise. Where? Show me. And there is another tenet of the Hermetic sciences, the occult sciences, that opposites actually produce each other. And more succinctly, they interact in a way that produces a third thing, right? Male, female produces child. Hot, cold extremes produce warmth that's habitable. And it's a third thing of a higher nature. So this idea that you're able to transmute lead into gold, it's not actually lead, it's mercury. Lead is part of the process, but that's a misconception that people have. You also transform your traumas into knowledge and wisdom, and really everything negative that exists in the universe exists as potential to be transmuted into something useful and positive. All of this raw material is there to create the philosopher's stone, the quintessence. This time period we're in is a great example of that, because everything increases in perfect balance, more or less. And in a time of great threat, you will notice there's tremendous opportunity. Look at the crypto market right now. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of other ways, and it really depends upon where you put your focus. The magician has the inertia of the universe to assist him. So all coins have two sides. It's up to you which side you are going to focus on. And there is, even the worst things that you can find in the universe are there to become fuel to transmute the lead of everyday experience into the gold of higher consciousness and transcendental experience and all of that sort of stuff. So, do work, son. Yeah, so we're talking about how the, sorry guys, my cursor seems to have, there we go. Where are we at? So we will conclude our essay on the character and claims of the person known to the world as Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus with an account by a modern scientific man, modern, relative, which seems almost spiteful in its ignorant attack upon a philosopher of the most undoubted original genius, whose book in Italian, De Gabinetto, is considered by all competent people who have examined the deepest into these very mysterious subjects in companionship with the true edition of the allegory entitled The Comte de Gabalis of the Abbé de Villars, or Villars, I don't know what that is, as supplying an outline, yield in the proper mysterious terms, veiled, sorry guys, there's something on my computer screen, so it looked like a Y. Veiled in the proper mysterious terms of the profound system of the true Rosicrucians. The rose and the cross, by the way, what are those symbols? A penis and a vagina. That's an important thing to take note of here. And this is not, you know, a lot of people have accused the mysteries of being like a dark sex cult and all this sort of thing. And that has, you know, spin-off kind of, I'm not saying that's never happened. But the original current of like Hermetic and Rosicrucian stuff, their sex is important, the energy, but it's not profane and it's not wicked and it's not anything, you know, predatory or. There are those that have chosen that path, but just for the record, it's not the case. The reader may note with displeasure the perverse ingenuity with which this author endeavors to invest with ridicule that which he may be safely accepted as incompetent to understand. Petrus Hauboldus of Copenhagen was surely one of the most enterprising publishers of his day, for he had the temerity to publish a book entitled Hermetes Egyptiorium at Chemicorum Sapientia, a book square as to its dimensions, small as to its type, drier than dust as to its contents, 400 pages of 2 centuries of age, written in Latin with a sprinkling of contracted Greek and floridly dedicated to John the Baptist. A book wherein the author endeavors to prove that alchemy was known before the flood, that Hermes Trismegistus was a real personage, the inventor of all arts, the father of alchemy, and much else besides. We may well imagine that the author of such a treatise was no ordinary man, and our conjecture proves a tolerably correct one. So, here is another extremely interesting, important aspect of the Western occult tradition, the Hermetic, whatever, all of this stuff that you can kind of lump into this. Magic. Aleister Crowley added the K, not only to designate it from stage magic. He didn't necessarily even mean by that, like, fake illusions. Even something like, you know, seances or whatever. Magic, by his definition, was the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. And then he gave a protocol, basically, for achieving this in the sense of, you know, mathematical, algorithmic, you know, an equation that is pretty much infallible. And it's true. Let's see if I can remember this off the top of my head. One of them is any change may be affected through the proper kind and degree of force to the proper object through the proper medium, or the proper kind and degree of force through the proper medium to the proper object. No object is capable of any change of which it is not inherently capable. We cannot make men from tin, you know, and on like that. And the premise of it all, though, goes even beyond that, that every person has the capacity to access higher genius. You know, this was when Plato and Pythagoras and Aristotle and, you know, on and on and on and on and on. Pretty much any highly intelligent person, when asked what the, you know, and I'm talking about the great genius level intelligences, you know, what is our goal? What is our point? What are we doing? Know thyself, right? And what that really means, according to this system, is that everyone has some innate predisposition, some innate talent, some kind of function in the universe. The law of necessity is just as important and potent and omnipotent, really, as gravity. Everything is as it is because it must be, and it cannot be any other way. There's not a grain of sand, in the universe that is out of place. And that applies to us as well. And because we have had some folks that have realized that they could create dissonance patterns in the beings of the masses and constrain them to their purposes, we have had our true will occulted from us, most of us, in an unnatural way. And so, you know, our primary objective is to discover that purpose, to reveal to ourselves the true self, microcosm, macrocosm. The universe is doing the same thing on a larger level, using us kind of to explore and learn all about itself, science and art and all of this kind of thing. But then on another level, once you've done that, you'll realize that you have access to another layer of intelligence. What that is, I'm not sure. That it exists, I am absolutely positive of. I have received information from this intuitive voice, I guess, way too many times of too high specificity. In fact, just the other day, something crazy, unexpected happened, and I thought about it happening the day before. No shit. And once I'm able to tell the story, you know, you'll see. It's not something people that are skeptical of this. It's because none of us, no one that I've ever been aware of, is able to do it on command all the time. There's no psychic or telepathic person that I'm aware of. There are varying degrees of consistency and access, but I am not aware of any person that has just been able to do it at will, you know, but I am confident that it happens. Sometimes it even seems as though there is a mediator that decides what is relevant. It's like the law of necessity, you know. One of the beliefs about this is that these things of a higher nature, this higher consciousness stuff, are actually even more confined by the strictures of natural law as you go higher in the scale, which makes sense, right? So that could be part of it. The law of necessity applies absolutely to things like precognition and this sort of thing. But beyond even precognition, the idea is access to a higher level of genius, and your success will be your proof. And then if you look at the life of Aleister Crowley, regardless of what you think of him ethically or whatever, the fact that he wrote, you know, I don't know how many tens of thousands of pages on how many subjects and the level of genius, and he was beating people in chess games with blindfolded with his back to them, memorizing their moves and calling them out and beating them two at a time, and climbing K2 and every, you know, you go through the list of things in his life, your success will be your proof, right? That we can access this higher genius. You cannot explain Aleister Crowley without admitting that this is a thing. And then when you look back through the lineage at the ones that came before, Eliphas Levi, John Dee, all the way back to Hermes Trismegistus, this guy is credited for creating alchemy, medicine, or discovering, or what, however you want to put it, alchemy, medicine, philosophy, writing, even by some estimations, and a whole huge list of stuff. That is exactly what a magician does. They connect with their higher genius, and even normal people, normies, know this stuff intuitively. They do. Think about it. When I was a kid and somebody was like crazy intelligent, my mom would say shit like, he's like a wizard on LSD. And I would be like, what? What? Why would you say that? She doesn't know. It's part of the culture. People just know. It's like it's in our ancestral memory that magicians, wizards, are people of incredibly high, in fact, preternatural intelligence levels. People with intuition that defies belief. And, staggeringly high IQs for the most part. Okay. I don't know how much longer this introduction is. And I have to move. We'll keep going for a bit. Oh, here. People know what a wizard is. Actually, I'm going to look at the chat again and make sure, because my equipment often will just stop working without warning. The principle of sufficient reason is the language that the Pythagorean Illuminati use for the principle of the law of necessity. One thing that actually bothers me about the Pythagorean Illuminati is that they tend to rebrand a lot of older ideas, and there are a lot of reasons why I don't see the necessity, and it's kind of red flaggy. Having said that caveat, though, I do think that a lot of their stuff is pretty on point. They can call themselves the Illuminati. By the way, you guys, hit the like button, please. Consider subscribing. If you do, hit the bell notification. I found out that my click all is lower than average on YouTube, and I hate that. So when you subscribe, if you can remember to hit the bell. Also, we're demonetized, so I rely entirely on you guys to get value for my value. So we really do appreciate our patrons. You get access to 6 years of material similar to this. Weekly, I do secret streams, usually about a half hour long, and for a couple of years now, we've been working our way through Masonic degrees. And there are also options to support via PayPal and Cash App and a bunch of other stuff in the chat and in every video description. And I have a bunch of medical procedures I have to pay out of pocket for. So really trying hard to raise extra money right now. And we appreciate all of you. In fact, while I'm on the subject, I need to shout out like a half a dozen new patrons. Let's see. Where is this list? Joshua, thank you for your patronage. Ro, thank you for your patronage. Spiral Out, I'm not sure if you signed back up or have just become more active. Either way, thank you. Taryn Hatfield, thank you for joining. Wesley Wilson, I believe he's been around for a while. Kimberly M. Allen is new, and thank you. Star Child is new, and thank you for your support. XMS, thank you as well. Ashton Barr canceled, so that's unfortunate. Sorry to see you go. Flezick, welcome back. Several of these patrons are actually returning patrons, so I appreciate you guys. I hope it's because you had some difficulty and have gotten over it, or that if you did have some difficulty and have re-signed up, you were through your difficulty is actually how I'm really wanting to say that. So thank you guys all so much, and hopefully we'll have a bunch more new Illuminati after the stream when I check back in. Okay, so there are a bunch of authors in Europe, and they're talking about stuff, and but, you know, they're actually, he's talking about exactly what I went off on this rant about. That these people that were writing about this stuff were astounding geniuses. Such an astounding genius as Olaus Borrichius. He could readily undertake the duties of 4 diverse professorships at the same time. We can scarcely imagine 3 greater antitheses than the philological faculty, the poetical faculty, and the chemical faculty. But here we find them united, or assumed to be united, in one man. Syncretism under one roof. Isn't that interesting? Yet more, Borrichius was appointed court physician and assessor of the Supreme Court of Law. He was the very personification of all learning, if we may judge by the treatment he received from his countrymen. I don't know how relevant all this is, but I think the point he's making is that just as Hermes was credited with all of these, creating all of these different disciplines, these guys that have taken this stuff up, their success is your proof. Various treatises on philology, on the quantity of syllables, on the Greek and Latin poets, medicine, chemistry, and botany. It is strange that a man who, presumably, in his capacity of judge, was in the habit of sifting evidence and of avoiding hasty generalization, should have endeavored with much elaborate argument to prove that Hermes Trismegistus was a real personage, that his Smaragdine tablet was really found by the wife of Abraham, and that it contained matter of the highest import to mankind. We must imagine that in this matter, Borrichius allowed the imaginative faculty, due to his poetical temperament, to exert an undue influence over his more sober judgment. Hell yeah, dude. That's exactly what I was going to say. That, you know, these guys, like the Hermetic ayahuasquero Christian guy here, that I have a bit of a dissonance with, not personally, you know, I actually like him plenty, but philosophically, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, so I think, you know, what happens a lot is that people that are, you know, heavily indoctrinated by Christian cultures, they come across this stuff and they're smart and they realize what it is, but then they have to contextualize it in their religion. Otherwise, they're terrified that they're committing blasphemy or something. You know, so that is a lot of the source of the distortion and the infection, really, of the Hermetic current with these institutionalized religions. He is equally at pains to assert the authenticity and antiquity of the various Greek MSS on alchemy in the libraries of Europe. He specially mentions an MS by Zosimus of Panopolis on the art of making gold in the King's Library in Paris. And Scaliger tells us that this same MS was written in the 5th century. M. Ferdinand Heffer is apparently penetrated by the Borrichian spirit of faith and imagination, and he unhesitatingly accepts the early date attributed to the Paris MS. We don't really need so much of this tedious history. Let's see what this next editor's note. Oh, this is relevant. It is to be remarked that the preface and preliminary essay by the distinguished author of the Rosicrucians, Phallicism, etc., Hargrave Jennings, first intimated as distinct, are presented combined in his exhaustive scholarly resume as the most suitable form of introduction to the double entente work, which is also said still to exist symbolically in the most extraordinary ancient combination of hieroglyphics, metaphysics, and mathematics that ever occupied the attention of the human mind, indicated by Guillaume Postel in his Keys of Things Concealed Since the Commencement of the World and known only by initiates. I will look for that and give it a quick looking over, and maybe we'll give that the same treatment we're giving this. Okay, so It's almost 10 o'clock, and I have to move, so we're going to take a look at the chapters. We're about to get into the meat and potatoes of this, the sermon, the encounter with the Dragon of Light. Maybe Hermes just had some bufo, and that's all that happened. And in fact, I should mention, I can't believe I haven't said this. I may not have, but it's true that Hermeticism is, and the entire really Western occult tradition in its original, just the mystery lineages, I guess I should qualify it that way, is a shamanic tradition, a very, very sophisticated one, without a lot of the superstition and variants of protocol that you find in a lot of the other traditions. I don't mean that with any disrespect at all. It's just as it is. It's very sophisticated, but the use of some sort of consciousness catalyst in the Kaikion is not disputed. The Eleusinian Mysteries, it was, I think, acacia, some type of acacia, and Syrian rue, because that plant both of those plants would have been available in the Middle East and in Greece. So that makes sense to me. Albert Hoffman suggested that it was a ergot brewed beer. The problem with that, I think, is that ergot is extremely toxic if it's not prepared correctly. The death from ergot is very similar to mercury poisoning. You get gangrene, you lose your mind, your limbs start falling off and whatnot. The experimentation process would not have continued. I really don't think they would have made it anywhere. So my guess is that it was Syrian rue acacia, which is just like ayahuasca, a little bit more difficult from what I hear. I've never tried the ruasca, but okay. So next stream, part 3. And look at that. Part 3, Hermes Trismegistus, the Thrice Greatest, getting into him communicating in the 3rd part. The Pymander, the Holy Sermon, the key that God is not manifest, and yet most manifest. This whole thing of God not being manifest. Incredible for me to have discovered this. Oh man, the sermon to Asclepius, is that the lament? Is that the same thing? But I had this idea many, many years ago because I could not reconcile the fact that it was obvious to me the universe is not blind and random totally. But also there's clearly when people are praying and, when I would blaspheme on the playground when kids said, you'll get hit by lightning. And I would, storm me out and I would start screaming blasphemies and like, look, they're all diving under stuff because they were thinking I'm going to get hit by lightning and whatnot. You know what I mean, though? I'm just saying no sky god. Not in that sense. But obviously some sort of integrated intelligence at the very least in nature. And so the way that I was able to resolve that to an extent is that I thought, okay, well, let's assume that this Kabbalistic idea where there was nothingness that became aware, that the logos was actually, the spark of light came from the electromagnetic wave, because that's a vibration like a word, so logos. And the oscillation of this wave is what imparted symmetry to the chaotic primordial soup. But this was just the most absolutely fundamental, basic level of consciousness possible. And as creation complexified, and all the mystics tell us this, that the universe was produced by replication through reflection, right? So this thing that we call God is actually becoming more sophisticated, more aware, more developed, just as we do throughout our life, microcosm, macrocosm. And so in a sense, only exists at the end of the process in its totality. Just like everything else, it's developing. And if you think about it, if the law of necessity is true, that would have to be how it is. Why would it, nothing is happening for no reason. And that just solves so much. It explains our experience of, clearly there's something, but obviously not in the way that the old Bronze Age fairy tale institutionalized religions believe. This seems like a reasonable resolution. I would even go so far as to say self-evident. The true scripture is written large upon the land for those who are able to see it. So, let's see here. Are we going to continue it all tonight? Hermes Trismegistus, his first book. I think that is a perfect place for me to get into packing at 10 o'clock at night. Not thrilled at that prospect, but it's not really horrendous either. So I'll check in with the chat. If you guys have any questions or comments, I have a few minutes to interact a bit, and then I'm going to bugger right off. And 11:11. Mm-hmm. You can, too, watch it from the beginning with the speed increased. You just have to stop it and wait till it's finished and then watch it with the speed increased. How much is the Patreon? To access all of the secret streams and whatnot is the $10 tier. And then if you want to have consultations on various subjects that I consult, the rate is $50 an hour. And that includes guitar lessons. And I hate to call it life coaching, but I guess in a sense it's what it is. I would, you could say instruction in the mysteries, because it's kind of a combination of psychoanalysis and that instruction in mysteries, all the self, separation, illusion. Get that right, everything else becomes easier. Well, yeah, that's a huge, huge part of it. I can turn lead into gold. One click, scrap lead from pipes. Well, the actual process is, and this is really interesting to me on a couple of levels. Mercury being, the symbol of Mercury, I guess. I don't know what else to say about that, but, it's what it is. Mercury is also the symbol of Mercury, the person or the entity, and the metal, too, which has interesting corollaries with all of this mythology. And also, well, I'll explain in a second. This is a weird one, man. But it's the closest to the sun, which is gold, right? Knock a proton off, it's the closest element to the gold. And all the gold on Earth comes from stars. I mean, this line of conceptual continuity really is just miraculous. And then when you consider that the people that named the sun and Mercury, I know I give this example a lot, but it's wild. And just, the way the subconscious will bleed things through. That's how I think this happens. The sun, SOL, you put you in it. You have the individual soul. Our consciousness emanates from the sun. It's absolutely wild. But then on another level, the process that they use now in laboratories to convert mercury into gold is described in this 1851 Masonic tome here. And it was done the same way that they're doing it in the laboratory. Electrical current and mercury and lead. And then there's also this, and this one's a little bit more difficult to explain, but it also is a great sort of elucidation of the universal mind, and how we detect it. And I think it's also a good example of the old cliche that all that is metaphor, that what they call the veil in the occult traditions is like a Fourier transform that converts the ideal to the actual in some way. And so in Egypt, there have been burial chambers surrounded by mercury, right? But also, it's not the Aztecs. I can't remember the name of the tribe, but they are a subgroup of the Aztecs, or were. They also put mercury around their burial chambers. Mercury, one of his primary functions was as a psychopomp, ferrying the dead to, Hades. What the fuck? You know what I mean? It's not like the Aztecs had this association with this metal and this name and this, but yet we find the metal serving the same purpose in two completely disparate cultures that almost definitely didn't communicate. I know there's some evidence that there may have been. There's like a white guy painted somewhere in like an Aztec ruin or something. But you know what I mean? That's crazy. Unless there was contact, and then I guess it's not as crazy. But still, the metal, the connection is not ostensible, I guess. Is that the word? It's not, and yet it's obviously there between the entity and the mercury metal. Okay, let me look at the other chat too. I don't see Hermes Trismegistus, technology of the ancient days of Atlantis, Babylon, Tesla Tower, homie frequent. What? Okay, that's a great question. Do I think that some knowledge should be kept secret only for initiates, or should knowledge be available to all? The reason that Hermes' lips are closed, how does it say it in the Kabbalion? I can never remember this quote. The lips of wisdom are closed, but to the ears of understanding. That's all it is. There is nothing I can do that is going to make you understand something that you have not had internal processes and experience that have prepared you to process and to integrate. You know what I mean? That's what gnosis is, and this is why religions don't work. The kind of religions that demand of people that you memorize dogma and doctrine and then you try to adhere to it, that's completely unrealistic. That's not how it works. You become the doctrine because of internal processes that have created that within you, and then you're able to express that authentically. Otherwise, you're just going to be a miserable hypocrite trying to be religious. You know what I mean? So that's part of the reason. Another one of the reasons for secrecy is that I think there has been some compromise with the authorities. Because if the masses knew all this stuff, a couple of problems would occur. One of them is that none of them would be content bagging groceries at Walmart. Illumination is not going to help someone in that position. It's only going to make them miserable, And then also we would eat the rich. So there's that. They know that it makes people ungovernable. To be illuminated. So there is an element of oppression on the part of the authorities, and I don't know that I can even criticize that. Because if it's true that everything happens because of the law of necessity, there is a point to all of this. There is a point to civilization developing in the way that it has. I sometimes think of how, say there's a timeline, and we have to develop this technology and get things to a certain point at a certain time. And then all of a sudden there's not a need for 9 billion people anymore because AI and the lack of necessity for cheap plastic crap, and you know what I mean? You can see, without going too deeply into this and making people angry, from a certain perspective, you can see the law of necessity. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think these things sort of manage themselves to a large extent, and you see an explosion of interest and people like me talking about it, and a lot of adepts have come public and said that the time for secrecy is over in the last 150 years or so. Israel Regardie was criticized for publishing the Secrets of the Golden Dawn. Aleister Crowley published the key to understanding the entire symbolism of Freemasonry in chapter 69 of the Book of Law, the way to suck seed and the way to suck eggs, to the extent that 2 33rd degree Freemasons showed up at his door and were like, "How dare you print our secrets?" And he's like, "I haven't taken initiation." And they made him the head of the outer order on the spot of the OTO. Because they're like, if you figured all this out on your own, dude, like, nice to meet you, Hermes, in your current form or whatever. So you know what I mean? It's like add the right spice at the right time to rise above all the dirt and grime. I think that could be happening with humanity. But this question about secrecy is difficult to address. Another element of it, hey, did I not turn my... I thought I turned my... Yeah. That's weird. OBS shows it with my image, but YouTube apparently is just getting the old feed or something. I don't know what. Anyways, though, there's another element to the whole secrecy thing, which is, if you look around the world at different shamanic traditions, which is really what Hermeticism is at the end of the day, there is secrecy in all traditions. Shamans in South America do not share their ayahuasca recipes unless they have apprenticed someone. They oftentimes won't share the names of their spirits that they work with, because if you know the name, then you have power over it, is the belief. And so they're compromising their own power by giving things away. And so there are personal power reasons for magicians to keep their secrets. But I can say that the belief that the secret traditions only keep secrets because we're out to, sacrifice all of the babies and, all the weird conspiracy lunacy, which I'm not saying that there are no people anywhere that do these things, but generally it's bullshit. You know what I mean? It's not because there's a bunch of evil that needs to be concealed. That's not it at all. There's a lot of other stuff, For people that have not been properly prepared to have certain types of information is extremely fucking dangerous too, Certain knowledge is... it's real easy to understand. Look what happened when Einstein figured out how to split the atom. Wise too soon, or rich too soon, wise too late, is disastrous, inevitably. For myself, I acquired way too much power before I had the wisdom and just made a horrific mess. It was a beautiful disaster and full of magic and improbability and stuff, but still a disaster at the end of the day, So, and then there's also the fact that if I tell you about a certain vision that people tend to have during the visualization of a certain archangel during the LBRP. I'll even tell you which one. It's Oriel. There is something that if you have performed this ritual aright for long enough, you'll see it in your eye. And when you join the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, for example, your portal will give you a envelope. And once he has seen in your magical journal that you have had this vision in association with Oriel, he will tell you to open it up, and you will realize that they knew that was going to happen. And if I told you right now, and then it happened to you, you wouldn't know whether you had experienced this authentically or if I had just put it in your head. So some of the secrecy is actually just to protect the purity of the experience for the initiate, and so that we don't ruin things for you. Is there any knowledge still secret? Yes, there definitely is. There's no religion here, Jamie. That we're talking about the Hermetic mystery tradition, which is really more like a protocol of studying philosophy, science, making observation, altered states of consciousness. A whole toolkit that is engineered around catalyzing processes that result in gnosis in the individual, basically. Long story short. No religion, no dogma, no prophet to worship. None of that. I met a guy who was telling me about the sun god and monoatomic gold. He said he was an alchemist. Yeah, he might have been batshit crazy, but I can tell you what he said. Somebody was telling him about the sun god and saying he was an alchemist and talk about monoatomic gold. gold is, in my belief and in the Incas' belief and the Aztecs and Babylonians, Syrians, Egyptians, the alchemists, the North American tribes, a lot of them as well, maybe all of them, I'm not really sure, thought of as crystallized light, which is therefore crystallized consciousness. The Inca called it the sweat of the sun god, right? The prima materia, alchemical gold, is basically a substance that is a bridge between physical gold and this etheric gold. And there's actually several different forms of it, physical and non-physical, and, but that's the best for this analogy. And so, for example, like I found myself way up high in the Andes, so close to the sun, in a sun-worshipping area where San Pedro cactus, which the shamans say allows you to have a dialogue directly with light, and there's tons of gold here. The electromagnetic frequency around this area is actually apparently like more dense or something than anywhere else on the planet. And so taking colloidal gold, combined with all of those circumstances, I think has really enhanced my ability to advance, right? So I don't, based on what you wrote, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm willing to bet that that's what he was talking about. So he asks, is any knowledge still secret? Yeah, there's stuff that I won't say publicly, for sure. What branch of the Illuminati did you mention? Is it the Pythagorean Illuminati? Yeah, the modern Pythagorean Illuminati, but really the real Illuminati is the Pythagorean Illuminati. The Illuminati is not what people think. It's not some group of Hollywood sex weirdos that are, whatever. It's not that at all. And one of the things that has always really bugged me and blown my mind is that no conspiracy theorist I've ever met has read the Weishaupt papers. Now, I'm probably not pronouncing his name right. But the founder of the real Illuminati, his house was raided because one of his runners was struck by lightning, and he had a message in his breast pocket, and the cops found it, and they realized he was trying to subvert the Masonic lodges and the banking system and the education system and get rid of religion and borders and create a world where Illuminism was taught, where, people were not brainwashed. I mean, anybody watching the stream right now, if you go and read his papers, you would vote for him for president above either of the last two candidates in a heartbeat, every single one of you, guarantee it. That's why they've told you to be afraid of them and hate them and to think that they're evil. Because it's like the key to liberation. People that study propaganda should be more weary of these alternative narratives, because that's where the real propaganda is going to be, to try to get the sheep that are escaping to turn back around and run right back into the herd. But yeah, what I was saying is, luckily, Pythagoras happened to travel to Egypt right around the time that the Pharaoh realized the mysteries were a problem, that people taking psychedelic plant potions and actually figuring things out, you could not rule these people. So that's when the monotheistic religion was suddenly forced on everyone. The mysteries were outlawed, and Pythagoras, around the time this happened to be happening, was heading back to Greece to found his mysteries, which became the Eleusinian mysteries. But then around the 3rd century, the Roman consulate was like, wait a minute, this is a problem, and they banned it. Aristotle said, without the mysteries to guide them, humanity will be lost, and they will not even survive. And look at us, And so they sent the archons, which are a certain type of magistrate, in to subvert and sabotage the mysteries. And then they used a lot of what the mysteries taught to create Christianity in a sort of dumbed down and re-engineered version. The spies, the archons that penetrated the mysteries in order to steal the secrets, learned a lot about psychology by doing that. And they also learned by observation that, people know the truth when they hear it. So they knew that if they veiled the truth in a myth, people would sense the truth in it, and they would dedicate themselves to it with that insane commitment that you see in Christians, right? the sun as the source of our soul, and Jesus walking on water, it's light reflecting on water. The sun appears to be suspended for 3 days on the Southern Cross. It stops moving for 3 days, and that's the time in the tomb. I mean, you guys know all that whole yarn, I'm sure. But, that's why, and this bugged me for a long time, thinking, because I knew, reading it, I was like, man, initiates wrote the New Testament. There's no doubt about that. So who are these people that betrayed their oaths and betrayed humanity and perverted the mysteries and, did this on behalf of the consulate in order to rule and what the fuck? And then I realized when I found out about the archons in this 33rd degree Mason's book, that they were spies that were sent in there with that purpose. So it's not like they were genuine initiates that betrayed everyone. They were spies. And that's how that happened. Yeah, I don't know what he means. The history is young. The starting point is much further back, but the mysteries can at least be traced to Babylonia, Syria area. What do you think of the supposed Old Testament prophecies Christians bring up from the Old Testament about Jesus? Well, I mean, yeah, if you've done good drugs and met Jesus, it's because it's in your subconscious and it's been so deeply programmed in there. When you say Jesus was not a historical personage, people say, oh, well, historians actually pretty much unanimously agree. That's what Google says. But then if you actually look and see why, there's like a couple of references in writings that are there's no reason to take it seriously at all. The reality is the Roman consulate had spies everywhere. They anally recorded everything, all court proceedings, all of it. There's nothing. There's no arrest. There's no record of a Jew running around preaching. Absolutamente nada. Nada. Nothing. And his entire, what do you call it? When he went around preaching, the ministry, follows the exact campaign trail of Titus. The Roman consulate created the religion. Who else would do that? Who else would write a story where the journey of the prophet followed the military campaign trail of Titus exactly, even the timing of it and stuff? There's also the fact that Paul says twice in Corinthians, I made all of this up. It is neither revelation from God nor command. Take it with a grain of salt. I made it all up. It is only my opinion, he even says in one of those 2 times. The supposed word of God literally says, its main author, that it's not the word of God. Literally twice. This is not the word of God. It says in the Bible twice. Main author, twice. And you know why people don't know that? You go to church and they say, open your Bibles to Genesis 10, 12, whatever. And then you read that, everyone highlights it. Ask any Christian for their Bible. It'll be full of highlighted passages. And then they just skip around reading only those. That's why they don't know about all the incest and, lunacy and all the insanity and the fact that Paul twice, who wrote 14 of the 27 books, said, I literally just made all this up. Don't take it too seriously. Including redemption through the blood of Christ. Blood into wine came from Dionysus. A lot of the other Bible stories obviously came from Hermes and other characters. Because you can trace the origins of this composite myth in every way, we know with 100% certainty who fabricated it and that it is fabricated. So, I don't think anything of the Christian prophecies of, whatever the New Testament, except for the book of Revelations. But you know what that is? Go Google the Lament of Asclepius, and you'll realize that it's just an abridged version of the Lament of Hermes. That's all. There's nothing legitimate in that book. And it has been an absolute scar upon the actual face of divinity. It is a hideous influence on humanity. Any more info on dragons? What the fuck? Okay, guys, but seriously, I've got to pack and get ready to move. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. This is going to get deeper and weirder, so holler at your boy, bring all your homies. Wink your third eye thrice, if you know what I mean. Yeah, we're going all the way down the rabbit hole, and we're never coming back out. What was that? The red pill or the blue pill? You know, you can't go back. So please hit the like button, share, subscribe. Happy Thanksgiving. Consider becoming a patron because we're demonetized, and that doesn't help pay the bills. So you can, which is amazing, and we love you for that. All of our patrons are deeply appreciated, and they get perks. They do. You get perks because we love them. And good night.